Behind South Africa's prison walls are couples who didn't just love each other, they also carried out deadly acts together. Their cases caught national attention and showed how dangerous partnerships can become. These are some of the deadliest couples in South African prisons. Number 1. Vusimuzi cat Matlala and Tsakani Matlala. Ibongweni Supermax is South Africa's absolute end of the line, reserved exclusively for high-risk prisoners whose influence poses a threat to the entire justice system. And that is precisely where multi-million rand tender tycoon Vusimuzi cat Matlala was sent. Matlala lived the high life, a prominent Pretoria businessman connected to massive government contracts, private protection fleets, and high society social circles. But behind the bespoke suits, high-end mansions, and political clout lay a far more sinister operation. And when state prosecutors unsealed a massive 25-charge indictment in the Gauteng High Court, Matlala wasn't standing in the dock alone. Standing right beside him, facing the full weight of the law, was his wife, Tsakani Matlala. To understand how a husband and wife ended up facing decades behind bars together, you have to look at how their empire was built. Vusi Matlala rose through the private security sector, eventually securing lucrative state tenders worth hundreds of millions of rands. He moved in elite circles, making national headlines for his vast wealth. However, law enforcement investigators allege that Matlala was a key figure in what authorities called the Big Five criminal syndicate, an organized network operating at the intersection of contract hits, high-level intimidation, tender fraud, and illicit cash flows. The unraveling of the Matlala empire began on an October night in the affluent suburb of Bryanston. A vehicle carrying South African actress and media personality Tebogo Thobajane, Matlala's former partner, was suddenly ambushed in a hail of gunfire. Thobajane miraculously survived the violent attack despite being hit in the leg, eventually leaving South Africa in fear for her life. When specialized police units took over the case, they uncovered a disturbing trail of evidence. State court documents allege that just days before the hit, Matlala initiated a 20,000 rand transfer directly from one of his primary company bank accounts. Within minutes, 15,000 of that cash was routed straight to an alleged hitman as initial payment. The day after the shooting, another 100,000 rand was transferred, followed by fraudulent invoices created to mask the money trail and mislead investigators. Ballistic evidence and forensic tracing tied the syndicate to 3 separate shooting plots between 2022 and 2024, including targeted attacks on taxi boss Joe Sibinyoni and music producer DJ Vetties. The case officially reached its dramatic peak when Vusimuzi cat Matlala, Tsakani Matlala, and their co-accused stepped into the dock at the Gauteng High Court in Johannesburg. The 25-count indictment against them is relentless. 11 counts of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, fraud, and defeating the ends of justice. Prosecution teams allege that Tsakani Matlala was far from an innocent bystander simply enjoying the fruits of a lavish lifestyle. Rather, she was an active co-conspirator involved in laundering illicit funds and helping conceal the syndicate's operations. While both Vusi and Tsakani have entered firm pleas of not guilty, defending themselves against key state witnesses, ballistics, and forensic banking records, their fall from grace is complete. Once a power couple, driving million-rand vehicles through Sandton, they now face the fight of their lives inside South Africa's strict high-security judicial system. Number 2. Pastor Melisizwe Monqo and Siphosihle Pamba. To the Congregation of God's Work International Ministries, 32-year-old Melisizwe Monqo was a charismatic man of God. Wearing tailored suits and standing at the altar, he preached righteousness to his followers. But behind the holy facade, Pastor Monqo and his 26-year-old wife, Siphosihle Pamba, were orchestrating one of the most terrifying life insurance murder syndicates in South African history. Their operation relied on a lethal premise, using spiritual authority and trust to quietly take out high-value life insurance and funeral policies on unsuspecting church members, ex-partners, and desperate job seekers. Monqo and Pamba forged identity documents and impersonated relatives on official calls to list themselves as the sole beneficiaries across major insurance firms like. In total, the couple set up policies that stood to pay out a staggering 26.9 million rand. The scheme reached its boiling point in July 2018 with 25-year-old Hlompho Mohapi, known to her friends as Koloi. Unemployed and searching for work, Hlompho was lured with what she believed was a life-changing job interview at the George Airport. Desperate to attend, she borrowed money for taxi fare and was dropped off near the Thembalethu Bridge. Waiting for her in a silver-gray sedan was Pastor Monqo himself, alongside his hitman cousin, Phumlani Kusheka, sitting quietly in the back seat. Hlompho got into the car expecting a career opportunity. Hours later, a lone fisherman driving along a desolate gravel road near Voelklip in Harold's Bay spotted a body lying in the bush. It was Hlompho Koloi. She had been assaulted and stabbed. When police arrived at the scene, it was too late. Crime intelligence officers executed a swift response. Just 2 days after the body was discovered, officers intercepted the hitman, Phumlani Kusheka, attempting to flee near Knysna. Inside his pocket was the victim's cell phone, and on his clothing was her DNA. Within days, investigators raided the pastor's residence, arresting both Monqo and his wife, Siphosihle Pamba. What Detective Sergeant Thembekile Matwa uncovered next sent shockwaves through the country. Hlompho was not their first targeted victim. The couple had already insured multiple other individuals and were actively planning subsequent attacks to trigger multi-million rand payouts. When the case went to trial in the George Circuit High Court, the details laid bare before Judge Taswell Papier were horrifying. Recorded phone calls exposed Pamba systematically lying to insurance call center agents, pretending to be family members to finalize policy registrations. While Pamba later expressed remorse in court, testifying that she was psychologically controlled and abused by her husband, Monqo, and his hitman maintained a cold lack of repentance until the end. In November 2021, the High Court delivered a crushing sentence. Pastor Melisizwe Monqo was sentenced to life, plus 252 years and 3 months imprisonment across 25 counts, including murder, kidnapping, and 13 counts of fraud. The hitman, Phumlani Kusheka, was handed life plus 63 years. Siphosihle Pamba was handed an effective 20-year sentence after the court acknowledged her role while taking into account her history of domestic abuse under her husband Monqo. Number 3. Ralph Stanfield and Nicole Johnson. In the coastal city of Cape Town, the name Ralph Stanfield has long carried an overwhelming weight of fear, power, and high-stakes criminal allegations. For years, law enforcement agencies identified Stanfield as the alleged leader of the notorious 28S gang syndicate, one of the most entrenched organized criminal networks in the Western Cape. Operating out of the volatile landscape of the Cape Flats, Stanfield survived assassination attempts, intense police surveillance, and brutal underworld turf wars to build an empire that reached far beyond the streets. But behind his public persona and street influence stood a crucial operational partner who helped run the financial engine, his wife, Nicole Johnson. Unlike traditional gang narratives focused solely on street-level violence, the story of Stanfield and Johnson represents a modern evolution of organized crime. Johnson, a well-educated businesswoman, operated as the executive brain of their corporate infrastructure. Through registered entities and multi-million rand commercial property portfolios across Cape Town. Together, the couple established a dangerous dual-front operation, territorial control of street syndicates paired with high-end corporate accounts and a luxurious lifestyle in the affluent suburb of Constancia. For years, state intelligence units watched as their network expanded into public works and strategic state infrastructure. Investigative reports later revealed how their corporate entities allegedly leveraged territorial control to capture lucrative subcontracts. The breaking point for state prosecutors came in late September 2023, when specialized tactical units executed a dawn raid on the couple's Constantia residence. Police breached the gates and took both Stanfield and Johnson into custody, launching one of the most significant gang prosecutions in recent history. State prosecutors unsealed a massive indictment charging the pair and their co-accused under the Prevention of Organized Crime Act, commonly known as POCA. The state's extensive charges included racketeering, murder, attempted murder, extortion, fraud, and illegal possession of firearms and ammunition. According to state indictments, Nicole Johnson was far from an unaware spouse, simply enjoying a lavish lifestyle, like our previous case of Kat Matlala's wife. Prosecutors maintained she was deeply embedded in the syndicate's daily operations, facilitating money laundering, managing tender submissions, and helping mask illicit financial streams. The state argued that the financial front run by Johnson was the primary engine that sustained and expanded the gang's reach. Following their arrest, the harsh reality of maximum security detention hit the couple hard. While Johnson was held inside Pollsmoor Prison's female facility, Stanfield was subjected to intense security isolations, being repeatedly transferred between Pollsmoor, Brandvlei, and Helderstrom maximum security correctional centers to curb his criminal influence. Despite legal teams launching repeated bail applications emphasizing Johnson's role as a mother and legitimate business owner, the state strongly resisted her release for extended periods, citing the risk of witness intimidation and interference with ongoing criminal investigations. As their complex trial moves through the Western Cape High Court, the dramatic arrest and ongoing prosecution of Ralph Stanfield and Nicole Johnson remains one of the most prominent crackdowns on organized gang empires in South African history.